A few of these statements that the governor I definitely agree with. This is a unique period in the time for our state. It's the first time I can remember that we're starting a new session in conjunction with a special session that has run for a long time. There are a lot of things different from this speech that the governor gave today than the previous 7 speeches she gave, and I've been in the chamber for all 7 of those. And in a new beginning of a new session, you want to be as optimistic as possible. But in looking back at some of the things that have happened over the 7 previous sessions that the governor spoke before, we've made some cuts in this state that have reduced the revenues that we most desperately need today. And I will have to agree with the governor. I wouldn't want to look back on some of those things. I wouldn't want to look forward. And we as Democrats want to look forward. We have long objected to some of those cuts and think they were ill-advised at the time, and it's proven to be the case. She made a reference to compromise. For over a year, our caucus has been speaking with different individuals from the outside business group to individuals in this building trying to reach a compromise. If we had reached a compromise before we adjourned last year, we wouldn't have passed some unconstitutional measures that caused the need for a special session. So we are more than ready to negotiate with individuals and compromise to the issues that we think will improve our state. The governor made mention of education, and we're all supportive of education. I don't think there's a member in that House chamber that doesn't support education. She referenced the 4-day school week. You know, I have trouble locating anything in the plan that will deal with a 4-day school week. Giving teachers a pay raise is a great first step, but we need to put more money into education. And the reference to a lifeline from the business community, my comment about that is a drowning man will grab any lifeline, whether it's a good one or not. And we have thrown them a lifeline, or the one has been thrown to us. We think it needs to be tweaked, and we think some true compromise needs to take place to change it. So today, I've got 3 individuals from our caucus who are going to speak with you about some different areas of those negotiations or discussions that we think need to be implemented to have a true compromise that will move the state of Oklahoma forward.
I first want to echo Leader Copeland's comments that it gave us a little bit of whiplash to hear the governor talking about the last 7 years and talking about the things that have gotten us here in the first place. Income tax cuts, gross production tax cuts. Governor Fallin advocated for all of those in her past State of the State addresses, and those are the reasons why we're here in this desperate situation where we need more revenue. And so it's not surprising that Governor Fallin wouldn't want to look back on the last 7 years. As this caucus stated when the Step Up plan was announced, we are very appreciative of the coalition for recognizing that we have a revenue problem in this state. And it's been caused by years of fiscal mismanagement by the Republican majority. We appreciate their recognition that teachers desperately need a pay raise and that core services in this state are woefully underfunded. These are things that we have been saying for 7 or 8 years. This caucus's test for any tax package has always been whether it brings in sufficient revenue and whether it is fair and equitable for all Oklahomans. For too long, low and middle income Oklahomans have been asked to pay more than those at the top, and certainly more than corporations, including the oil and gas industry. You don't need to look any further than the Republican majority's decision in the last few years. Number one, they ended the Earned Income Tax Credit, a highly successful fiscal program that was started by President Reagan. Their decision to freeze the standard deduction and become the only state in the nation to decouple from the federal amount and thereby deny Oklahomans one of the only benefits of the Trump tax plan for middle-class families. That's why we've asked the Step Up Oklahoma Coalition to include restoration of the Earned Income Tax Credit and the standard deduction, along with reversing the latest fiscally irresponsible income tax cut that disproportionately benefited those at the top. That tax cut also helped contribute to several revenue failures. The Step Up Coalition wants Oklahomans to pay more at the pump for gasoline. And the House Democrats are willing to do that if the income tax portion of their proposal is truly fair and doesn't ask even more from those living paycheck to paycheck. Furthermore, we firmly believe that the revenue estimate on the income tax portion of the Step Up plan put forth by the House Republicans is far too high. ITEP, a nonpartisan, nonprofit fiscal research organization, projects that the income tax portion raises only $67 million. This concerns us especially when the revenue generated from this legislation will be committed to ongoing recurring expenses like teacher pay. We wouldn't be doing our job as fiscally responsible legislators if we voted for a revenue plan with an inflated projection knowing that the money was already committed to something like a much-needed teacher pay raise. The ITEP analysis also clearly shows that those at low income levels will be paying more, not less, under the Step Up plan. For example, the middle 20% of income earners will be paying on average $35 more in income taxes, while also paying more for their gasoline, and as Representative Perryman will explain, seeing their electricity bills go up as well. We've communicated these concerns to the Step Up Coalition through a series of meetings, and we are hopeful that they will be adopted so that this revenue package can be a win and be fair for all Oklahomans.
One of the real concerns that we have with regard to this Step Up Oklahoma package is what appears to us to be a vindictive attempt to penalize the oil and gas industry because of penalize the wind industry by the oil and gas industry because of the cheap energy that is being produced by wind turbines and solar panels. And you know, as Democrats, first and foremost, we want renewables because they're environmentally friendly. But I want to explain just a couple of points about what the wind industry means to Oklahoma. The wind industry, as a result of wind industry and solar power in Oklahoma, our electric bills are being kept low. Our residential and business energy prices are low, and if we tag the wind and the solar industry with unnecessary and burdensome taxes that just to retaliate against that industry because of the clean energy that it brings, that will result in higher electric bills for seniors, for citizens all across Oklahoma. You know, right now the wind industry pays a heavy tax burden. As a matter of fact, if the oil and gas industry's gross production or severance tax was increased to 7%, the wind industry would still be paying double what the oil and gas industry pays as a tax burden, and that's so important to the district that I represent. We've got rural schools in the district that I represent that are being replaced. They're WPA era schools that are being replaced. We've got schools that are off the school funding formula as a result of the wind industry. The 5 to 6 wind farms that are in the district that I represent benefit public schools all across Oklahoma because when those schools go off of the state funding formula, that frees up funds for other public schools across Oklahoma. So it's really frustrating to see a wind component to this plan when the wind industry is being treated, as I say, in a vindictive manner, and not like it's being treated in other states. Other states, they see the advantage of the wind industry and the solar industry, and for that reason, I believe that the wind industry needs to come off. One of the things that, and I don't want to, I believe that Representative Williams is going to talk a little bit about gross production tax, but one of the things that that this new gross production tax is doing as a part of the bargaining between this group and the vertical drillers, it actually endangers the gross production tax, the severance tax on oil and gas, because it allows them to re-enter the incentive period. And so it's just a game. It's a game that they're trying to raise it to 4% instead of the 7 or more that it needs to be. But in lieu of that, what they're doing is allowing wells to be shut in for 1 year, so we lose that gross production revenue. And instead of them remaining at the 7% that they go to after the 36 months, they pop back down to the 4%. And so it's a game that the oil and gas industry can shut in their wells.
I get to be the odd man out and applaud Governor Fallin for one of her positions in addressing criminal justice reform. In the state of Oklahoma, we spend anywhere between $18,000 and $22,000 a year warehousing criminals, a large portion of those nonviolent offenders, and an even larger portion of that drug-related offenders. We spend less than $5,000 educating our kids. If we were only able to reverse that proportion, how lucky we would be and how much further ahead we would be right now. If we want to talk about restoring hope, those are numbers that we should absolutely flip. I would implore Speaker McCall and Pro Tem Schultz to pass the 9 bills that are still alive, left over from the 11 that we addressed last year, that are recommendations of nonpartisan committees on criminal justice reform and implementing the best practices that have not only worked worldwide, but has also been adopted throughout the United States. We could be so lucky if we want to talk about how much Oklahoma wants to be like Texas. Texas addressed criminal justice reform, and now they have the problem is, what do we do with our empty prisons? If only that were our problem. We have the Director of Corrections who is asking for nearly $2 billion to build 2 more prisons. And I can assure you, ladies and gentlemen, if we build them, we will fill them. That is not a solution to our criminal justice problem. The governor addressed mental health, substance abuse. We have to get money into those because we are spending so much on the backside for our refusal to address the problems on the front end. And with regard to the gross production tax, I thought it was remarkable that the only action that Lieutenant Governor Lamb has taken in his time in office was to break the tie vote, lowering the gross production tax to 2%, and he presided over our chamber today. Irony is never far in this building. That being said, the 4% is not a compromise. It should be restored to the 7% rate. And you don't just have to ask me, you can ask Oklahoma. It polls very well. This Step Up Oklahoma plan that you see before you is nothing more than a ploy by the oil and gas industry to avoid a ballot issue in November where Oklahomans overwhelmingly will adopt a restoration of the gross production tax to a 7%, which is a reasonable tax rate, which would put us in line not only with the regional average, but other energy-producing states in the nation. Whereas right now we are the lowest, and we will still remain inequitably low, which means that we are subsidizing Devon's ability to drill in New Mexico and Continental's ability to drill in South Dakota, and everyone else's ability to drill in states where their severance tax is much higher. Again, to what Representative Perryman said, if we really want parity, I do believe the wind industry is willing to give them parity. But let's all remember that the 2% they enjoy now and the 4% that we are discussing is in lieu of property tax. That was a deal struck long ago. And if I have to hear Chairman Rainbolt tell me that we should be taxing wind because we made a bad deal with wind a long time ago, I would remind him this state made a really bad deal with oil and gas at one point in time, and we refuse to admit that mistake and address it going forward. 1% on horizontals was a joke. We need to get it back to 7% so we can fund our kids adequately.